a midwinter new AD workshop. We're just really happy that you were able to join us. We have over 50 ADs registered. And so we do expect maybe at different points today, we'll see that number grow. And we hope that we've got a really good afternoon of information planned for you, some engagement to assist you in providing some community and support. Want to just call up my screen here and agenda. And just know that really the design for today is to build some community with first year or new ADs. And we're really looking at defining the new ADs as those ADs within their first 3 years. We really identify that group of 1 to 3 years as kind of those most formidable years, whether it's the classroom, whether it's as a coach, and in this case as an AD, where that support, that networking is so critical to your success. We're looking to develop skills, knowledge, share our experience to help you manage more effectively and build your leadership capacity. And we've got a few people on this call that I hope can help with that endeavor. And please know that really for us, we want you to stay in your role. And so we feel it's important as league staff, as experienced colleagues, our jobs are much easier when you're successful, and that consistency in your department, it not only helps us and helps us as we work on educating you and our member schools about our rules, our policies, how to most effectively administer sport. But even more importantly, is it helps your communities. It supports your coaching staff better and ultimately is going to lead to better experiences for your student participants who are choosing to engage in co-curricular sports and activities. Just a little backdrop here with this new AD workshop. And for years, the MSHSL has had a fall. For many years, it was in September. Maybe the last 4 to 5 years, an August workshop, an in-person workshop when it was possible to do that for our new ADs. Going back probably 6 to 7 years ago, the number of new ADs rose steadily from maybe numbers in the teens to low 20s, in many cases into the 40s, 50s, 60s, and I think we had nearly 70 new ADs across Minnesota last year. So that turnover is pretty robust. And I believe, and I think Bob is on the call with us today, at least coming and going maybe between some meetings. But I think it was about 5 years ago that there was a really intentional effort to go beyond that one-day workshop in September or October and expand that opportunity to network, build connection, and just provide resource for new ADs. And Bob, if you're on and can speak to that, I'll pause for a second and jump in.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Charlie. And welcome, everyone. Hope you're staying warm today. Charlie, thank you for hosting this. 5 years ago, roughly, I began my position and as liaison with MSHSL, realized it was great to do something at the beginning of the year, but never to touch base again and see how you're doing. And then in year 2, realizing it wasn't the first year ADs that also needed it, but it's a 1 to 3 year span where we have an opportunity to work together and make sure you get off on the right foot. And by the way, whatever you do well helps us, right? When we start to answer the same questions over and over again, if we can do it all in one place, that helps both of us. I think Charlie's done a nice job. What you're going to hear is lead, and especially for those that are in the first year, leadership, education, administration, and development, right? It's going to become a library, a set of resources, not just a meeting every other Thursday. So Charlie, great job in getting this organized. Love the direction you're going. That gives you a little background, and you're going to see some really good experienced ADs on here that are going to assist you today. And that's something we've been doing Russ and Matt and Sandra, if she's here, can tell you that that's happened about the last 3 years. So every year we get a little bit better and learn how we can support you here at the Minnesota State High School League. Charlie, I'll turn it back to you.
Great, thank you, Bob. And that was my next point too, is you're going to see some ADs who are choosing to engage with you today. I would just say some leaders in the profession, and we'll get you introduced to them here in just a few moments. Talk a little bit about just kind of some of the norms today for a virtual meeting. If I had my druthers, I would prefer that we engage in person all the time. I love the energy of being together and connected in one space. Of course, we've learned that that's not always possible. And we've also learned the benefit of being able to host workshops and meetings like this. We're engaging a far broader reach of ADs, I think geographically, and ADs whose jobs maybe look a little bit different because of their teaching assignments or other duties that are connected to their role as AD. And so we welcome the fact that our group is, 50 folks registered today, and we think that that's a direct benefit of doing this in a virtual format that we wouldn't otherwise be able to pull together. So just a few norms. We want to start on time and end on time. We realize that's probably the single greatest commodity you have or don't have is time. And so we want to be very respectful. When we say we're going to start at 1:30, we will. And when we say we're going to end at 4, we're going to end at 4 o'clock today, if not a little bit before that time, because we know your time is important. Just ask that you assume the best today. Assume the best about the presenters, that are sharing their knowledge, their experience, their expertise with you. Also assume the best about your colleagues that are choosing to join on the call today and contribute. Please know and understand that our schools are very different. The size, the geographic location, the diversity and makeup of the students that are come to school every day and that are within our walls. We have home schools, we have private schools. Despite all of those differences, many of our issues remain exactly the same. And I think about enforcing and teaching and enforcing league policies and bylaws. I think about dealing with behavior, whether it's student behavior, fan behavior, whether it's the behavior of our coaches. I think about having too many programs for the amount of spaces that we actually have in our building, right? And how to effectively schedule and manage all of the groups that are putting stresses and strains on our facilities, right? So no matter the size and structure of our school, we share a lot of the same issues, and we're here to learn from each other. We appreciate having your cameras on, and so do our presenters today, and realize that something may come up and forces you to step away and turn that camera off. But we'd love to see your face in absence of being able to be together today in person in the same room. It's really nice to help build that community. It's nice to help to get to know each other and learn from each other when we can see each other and interact with each other, not only with the sound, but through that visual feature as well. When we're in a large group setting, many of you have the opportunity I think all of you have the ability to unmute your microphone, but just with a meeting of this size, unless we call on you specifically to unmute, when we're in a large group, let's use the chat feature to ask those questions. A couple of things. One, it's that awkward space in these virtual meetings when multiple people are trying to talk over each other, who's actually being heard by the group, who isn't. It just can be a little bit clumsy. Chat helps clean that up for us a little bit. And also, when your questions or comments show up in chat, we're able to grab that, save that. It ends up being a resource as we work to try to meet you where you're at and try to address those questions. And if we can't get to it today, we've got a log of it, and we can get back to it at some point in the future. And as many of you were notified, Amy did remember. We were worried about remembering to hit record, but it is our intention to post this in your dashboards for you, but also for ADs that are unable to join us as a resource, and hope that they will use it as they see fit. Real quickly, here's the agenda for today. I'm going to spend just a few more minutes wrapping up our welcome and introduction. We're going to turn it over to Russ Reitz. You'll be introduced to Russ first. Russ is the activities administrator at Eden Prairie High School, and was at Prior Lake before that, and Lakeville North, I think even years before that. So Russ is just an incredibly gifted administrator. He's an excellent teacher, and he's going to walk through developing your transformational purpose statement, which I think you'll find very powerful. Matt Percival is probably in transit right now, wrapping up hosting of a Nordic ski meet. I think conference championships today, but he's going to race back into his office, and he's got some really great organizational material, a year-long planning template, just key deadlines and things that I think you'll find very helpful. Matt and Russ are both active in the Inside Out initiative, and so they have a lot of experience working with ADs, both young and old, helping them to be more effective in the work that they're doing. And so we're real fortunate to have them on this call, and excited that they're here. And then we've got, we're going to break out into smaller groups and try to get you into maybe more comfortable groups where there's going to be a little more intimate interaction between participants. But we're going to have Matt Mahoney from Fairmont, Megan Potter from Wayzata, and Tony Fisher leading different breakout groups. And you're going to stay in those groups for about 45 minutes. And we're going to rotate our instructors or our presenters into each one of those groups. And they're just going to give you some really kind of what I would call some fire hose and information on the topics you see there, some organizational and management strategies, coaching your coaches, and leveraging technology. We don't expect that 15 minutes is going to be enough time to be maybe life-changing in terms of your role as an AD, but what we're hoping is we can give you a few quick tidbits and ideas, and then because we're making connections, know that Matt and Megan and Tony are going to be there as a resource and follow up as they might pique your interest and get you thinking about how you're going to best lead and manage in your activities department in your school. And then we're going to wrap up. Every one of you was asked to submit 3 questions or items that you felt would be helpful if we could address those. Now, I'm going to be honest, 100 or 50 of you answered this or put 3 items in that registration. We tried to chunk those up the best of our ability. We're not going to get to all of them, but we do have those responses. We hope we can do that, answer some of those questions or present some information around those areas today. We'll try to spend some time in Q&A, doing a little bit more of that before we wrap up and close. Before we turn this over to Russ, I'd like you right now to use your chat feature to enter your name, your school, and your favorite sport or activity that you participated in when you were growing up. Appreciate your participation in the chat, everybody. Those of you that would mention football, that was my favorite growing up as well. I see a lot of team sports in here. Few individuals, wrestling. And looks like Russ is throwing shade on his assistant Trevor about beating him and around the world, and I'm not buying it. But I think that's a good segue, Russ, into your presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Russ, turn it over to you if you want to take us through developing our transformational leadership purpose.
Awesome. Thanks, Charlie. Yeah. Trevor's known for rebounding, but I don't know. I think I got him in shooting. Anyway, I'm humbled to be asked to do this each time and to be in front of new leaders. You know, I always say there's infinite more wisdom on the other side of the screen. Every time I do this presentation or I work with ADs, I feel like I learn and grow in my own journey. This is a really humbling position. And I hope that there's a little bit you can take away from today's presentation on how you want to lead and how you hope it feels to be led by you. So I'm going to start by just previewing a little bit of goal versus purpose. And a lot of this information is coming from Joe's book, Inside Out Coaching. If you haven't read this, it's a really great read, and it's really what we use to certify the head coaches in the state of Minnesota. We go through a purpose statement with them, like we're going to go through with you today. And we use the 4 questions. And the 4 questions are really important reflection questions for you to think about as you know you think through how you want to lead and why you want to lead and how it feels to be led by you. And we'll talk a lot about core values as we move forward. But if you haven't taken the time to talk or reflect on and share your why behind, you know, getting into this profession or being in this position, I think that's really important. So why do you lead? Why do you lead the way that you do? You know, we're all a product of the experiences we've had and the people that influence us, the people we care about most that sort of weave themselves into us. And so often those experiences and those people, they come out in us in leadership. We reflect the people that influenced us the most. And then obviously the empathy piece to leadership. And I think this is really important to today's world. So often we're asked to deal with conflict, to think as a parent would, or to think as an athlete would, or to think as another school administrator would. The empathy piece is really important. And so the question of how does it feel to be led by me? And obviously we're hoping that people feel supported and connected and uplifted, a part of something bigger than self. And when we focus on our purpose statement, I think we get to that kind of leadership. So we're going to walk you through that. And then the last question in Joe's book, this is chapter 5, is how will you define success? And I think you can define success at the end of the day. Certainly each day as athletic administrators, we have to ask ourselves, you know, did we make somebody's life a little bit better today? Did we take something off a coach's plate? Certainly did we put influential people in the lives of our student athletes? We also define success at the end of a school year. Maybe it's the end of each season. We'll all be asked to define success at the end of our careers. So a lot of this will be based on our purpose statement and these core values that we hope to develop. So first, I think to get movement in this initiative, we have to honor goals, right? And I tell our coaches all the time, we're going to do everything we can to win as many games as possible. That's what we're tasked to do. And that's okay, right? We're going to prepare, we're going to plan, we play to win games. That's the goal. And I want our coaches to continue being intentional about that. As ADs, I think we need to be intentional about that. How do we set up our programs, our systems to help our coaches win games, win meets, win matches? I think that's still really important part of this position. But I really want to emphasize the importance of putting as much or more intentionality or emphasis on the purpose, on your why, how you're going to lead, and how it's going to feel to be led by you. And that's going to come out through this purpose statement that we're going to develop with you today. So we know a goal is something we hope to achieve, right? It's got a beginning and an end. It's measurable. You can see, you know, if you were able to achieve that goal. If you fell short, you can set a new goal and work to achieve that. And so this is the language behind that, right? That I shared. We prepare, plan, and play to win, but winning is not our purpose. And we're going to define success, hopefully on purpose. And you know, winning is going to be a ingredient in that recipe, but certainly purpose is going to be the more important part of it. The definition of purpose, it's the reason for which something exists, The Tony Dungy quote that we use all the time, purpose does not have a beginning and an end like a goal does. Really, purpose is what we live for. It should be our compass. When we use the lens of those core values to make decisions, I think it sort of allows us to take a step away from all the emotion that's behind the decisions we make each day, and to see things a little bit more clearly. And so I hope it does that for you as well. This is Joe Ehrman's purpose statement from the book. And I'm just going to break it down for you because I think it's going to help you in writing your own purpose statement, and hopefully then help your coaches write their purpose statement. So first, the most important thing Joe felt that he did when he was coaching high school football was helping boys grow into men, helping them grow and become men, right? And so he coaches to help boys become men. That was the most important thing he felt he did in a day. And then he used the lens of empathy and integrity and responsibility as his core values for modeling and making decisions in the best interest of his athletes. And these are the core values that centered him when competition became too much for him, or when he was having a bad day. He had these reminders that he'd get himself back to this purpose-based center by reminding himself of how he wants to lead. And that's with empathy, integrity, responsibility. And then obviously his goal then was to help change the world for good. Like when he was going to judge success at the end of a season or at the end of his career, he wanted to know that he helped boys on that maturity continuum, right? Grow in becoming men, and then having them model back at him that empathy, integrity, and responsibility that would ultimately lead for positive change in our world. So that's Joe's purpose statement. And the goal of today is really going to be giving you an opportunity to kind of walk through and write your own. So the first step to that is looking and determining some core values that stand out to you. So I've got some up on the screen for you, and I'm just going to take you through a couple that are meaningful to me and why. And I think the most important piece to this is, why do these core values stand out to you? Where did they show up in life? Who was the person or the experience that you had that left that mark? And it does take some critical reflection in coming up with these, but once you understand why this core value is so important to you, then I really believe that you can live and model it with fidelity. And so the first one I'm going to share with you is just something that's in mine. So my purpose statement is, I lead to connect students with meaningful adults that foster love, kindness, and empathy. So I'm just going to talk about those three things. First, empathy is a big word for me, and I've been really trying to understand why that core value has been so important to me and where I learned it in my journey. So you wouldn't know this, of course, but my mother was a bookkeeper, and she could have been a bookkeeper for anyone, but she chose to be a bookkeeper at the Harriet Tubman Family Alliance. So this is a battered women's shelter. And it was important for her that she was able to serve in that way. And so on the weekends, she was the crisis hotline. She would answer the phone, and she often would answer the phone in front of us, and she would model such compassion and understanding, and there was never any judgment. She was first hoping to lead and help this person on the line through a crisis, but then was working behind the scenes to help them get on a path for success down the road. And she did it with such empathy, and it left a mark, and it became something that I wanted to do. It didn't matter the profession I was in, so to speak, but I want to have empathy at the core of everything I do. And so when I'm making a difficult decision, I try to think about who that decision is going to impact and how that will feel for that particular person. And it could be groups of people, but empathy has to be at the center of those things for me to feel like an effective leader, to me to feel like it feels supportive, to be led by me. And then I have this, this unconditional love that I try to model and use every day at work. And it's just something that I've learned. I had a really close relationship with Russell Andrew Reed Sr., my grandfather, who just found a way to love and serve other people all the time. And he modeled it. And he told stories of his experience at Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. And, he made a commitment to himself that day. He survived it. And he said, I'll live a life of service in honor of those who can't. And his love and service and the way that he helped people and the way that he modeled that for me became ingrained in me. So it became something that I wanted to do as a leader. And so, there's lots of different ways kindness has shown up in my life. And I use that too in my everyday life to try to model this idea of love, kindness, and empathy. So, it's not just the core value or the word on the page. I want to encourage you to choose a core value that sticks out to you, and then have a story about it, because the more we share our story, the more accountable we are to these core values, and the more people understand why we lead the way that we do. I've been to Eden Prairie for a year, and I've shared my stories with staff several times in large group settings, small group settings, all staff settings, and it's vulnerable. But I do believe that vulnerability-based trust is necessary in this work. And the more we share our stories with parents, with our athletes, with our coaches, the more I think we gain their trust and gain credibility in the position. And so as you're looking through those core values, I hope you've had a chance to maybe think about your story behind that core value as well. Now, I have two more slides that also include core values. And I just want to explain how they're different, because I think this is really important. Our goal is to become the best version of ourselves. I think in leadership, that's important. We can't help other people become the best version of themselves if we aren't constantly working on ourselves. And so I break these core values down into two types. The first type is performance character. If you see these character traits, you can kind of understand they show up more organically in sport. We don't have to be real intentional about learning these lessons. But they are important about our relationship to ourselves and how we become the best version of ourselves. So I want you to consider at least one of these in your purpose statement and how it would show up. So if I want to, one of the things I try to model every single day is work ethic. And that's something that I learned just growing up on a farm, in my family, that I had roles and responsibilities, and 5 a.m. before school was just what we did. And when we got home from our sport, we went back outside, and it's what we did. And so the long hours that I work now as an activities director, it works for me. It's just what I've always known. And I think people understand me better when I sort of share that this is my background, and the hours have never really bothered me. But as you look through those, what is a performance character trait that that you're sort of working on all the time? And in this job, maybe it's perseverance, because we get knocked down quite a bit. And we can model the ability to bounce back and compartmentalize and solve issues and move forward in positive ways. But performance character traits are really the relationship with yourself and our effort to become the best version of ourselves. The next types of core values, and I'm going to encourage you to take one or two of these as well when we get to purpose statement, and I'll put these back up on the screen, is our relationship to other people. So if you want to think about it this way, performance character, I always teach it as, these are resume traits. Like, what are some things that you'd want to use on a resume to brag about, your strengths? The moral character traits are more the eulogy type traits, the traits that other people would say about you when you're gone. These are the traits that we use to help other people become the best version of themselves. And these are the ones that I think we have to be really intentional about modeling and teaching. These don't show up as much in sport, and they don't necessarily show up as much in leadership unless we're intentional about them. So if you saw, mine was love, kindness, and empathy. Those three all pretty much show up in this moral character core value table that you see in front of you. So again, moral character traits are skills or core values that will really help you help other people. This is how you govern your relationships with others and how you help other people become the best version of themselves. And so as you look through these, it'll be important to take 1, 2, or 3 of these for your purpose statement. But again, I would challenge you to know, why are these important to you? Where do they show up in your life, right? If you've been humbled by this job and humility is an important part of your leadership style, I think humility is what leads to vulnerability. I think that'd be a really important word, but or a really important core value. I would just challenge that you can explain why that's part of your purpose statement. And so now I'm gonna give you a chance to just stop for a second and share 1, 2, or 3 core values that you pulled out of that and slip them into the chat. I'm just curious, maybe what you're all thinking. One way to do this with coaches is to pull up a Wordle and have them drop it into a Wordle account too, because it's kind of fun to see what everybody selects. But go ahead and drop those into your chat. So we have work ethic, responsibility, courage, consistency, positivity, grit, integrity, empathy. Excellent. So again, if I were leading this with coaches, I would ask coaches to turn to an elbow partner and share their core values and then a story behind at least one of them. You know, this is a lesson in shared vulnerability, and we earn shared trust amongst our constituents when we all share at the same level of vulnerability together. But really, everybody wants to be known, and there's no way to create a sense of belonging if we can't be known, seen, and heard. And I would even add valued if everybody in the group isn't known, seen, heard, and valued. And so an exercise in doing that is to share our core values, share the story behind the core value, where they learned it, maybe who was the person in their life that that wove that into them. That's where we get into that, the shared vulnerability piece. So purpose statements. Let's just talk quickly about how this works. And if you have a sheet of scratch paper, I think it'd be an important step in just starting to brainstorm and write these out. I'm sharing a few examples with you, but first the task. To think about as an AD, what's the most important thing you do in a day? You know, I tell my wife all the time when she asks me what I want for dinner or where we should go for dinner or whatever the question is, I make hundreds of decisions a day. And this one, honey, I just wish you'd make for me. And so understand that we do a lot of things and it's hard to boil it down to just one. I really feel like the most important thing I do is put meaningful adults in the lives of our athletes. And so I tell my coaches all the time, you are my purpose. So, you know, when I think about hiring and I think about providing professional development or evaluating coaches, it's through that lens of how am I ensuring that these are the types of adults that are going to help put our kids on a path for success after high school? How are the adults that I'm putting in the lives of our kids changing the arc of those kids' life? And so I just made it my purpose statement. I lead to connect students with meaningful adults. That's the number one thing I think I do every day. And oh, by the way, I try to be that meaningful adult in the lives of students as well. It's okay for me to be that person and for me to model it, obviously for our coaches and anybody else that I'm leading. And then I stick in those three core values of love, empathy, and kindness. I put for self and others mostly in response to the mental health crisis that we have right now. And I think it's it's okay for us to slow down every once in a while and do things that are good for us and be kind to ourselves, quiet that inner critic, that we all have. And so that's where I came up with for self and others. I think we need to work on ourselves and then help other people obviously be their best version as well. So that's where I came up with a purpose statement. It really is that simple. What's the most important thing you do? What are the core values, and who do you hope to influence? The second one I have here is Matt Percival, and you're going to hear from him at 2:15. He said, Reitz, no matter what you do not end early, because he's running back from an event. But his is, I lead to inspire and model empathy, service, and being a great teammate. So the most important thing that Matt does each day is inspire and model this concept of empathy, service, and being a good teammate. And so that's his purpose statement. And I see Matt live that purpose statement out all the time. I saw Megan Potter would also be on the stream today, and she sent me an email the other day, and her purpose statement is fantastic. It's on the end of her email. And so I grabbed it and didn't even ask for permission. So Megan, anyway, thank you for putting it on your email. But Megan's is, I lead with integrity to inspire others to do what is morally and ethically right, to be resilient, and to grow their desire to never stop learning. What an unbelievable purpose statement that is. So I think if I were to break Megan's down, she really wants to foster this concept of lifelong learning. And I think that is unbelievable for an athletic director to make that promise, right? That we're going to be teaching and learning, and that the learning does not end at the end of the school day. She's going to do that with integrity, and she's going to model, that morally and ethical decision-making, as well as being resilient. And so these are three just examples of strong athletic administrators that I know, who not only write the purpose statement, but that then work every single day to model it and to own it. So I want to give you a second to write that out. And I am going to ask that a few of you, well, all of you, write what you have in the chat. But I'd ask for a couple of you to maybe read it aloud to us too. Again, the more we share it, the more accountable we are to it. And it's not enough, obviously, to just write this. I think we have to share it at parent athlete coach meetings. I think we have to share it with our coaches. I think when we are, in front of our stakeholder groups, whether that be the school board, the superintendent, our principal, our colleagues, obviously the coaches and athletes, as well as our parent groups, that we share this purpose statement, and that we model that we're going to live a purpose-based life, and that we're going to lead through this lens of purpose-based leadership. So if I could, let's jump into the chat. If any of you have a purpose statement written, go ahead and add it into the chat. And I will say, there's so many different ideations of this as we move down the leadership continuum. My very first purpose statement was love more, serve more, find value. That's it. That's all it was. It was love more, serve more, find value. And then I really started to reflect on kind of that idea of what's the most important thing I do. And then I really started to look at why the core values, why they stick out or where they showed up in my life. And I sort of landed on this purpose statement now that's been mine for the last couple of years. So we have a few. Would Giovanni Jenkins be willing to unmute and share? I'd love to hear that one. Mr. Jenkins, are you there?
Jenkins is muted.
Oh, sorry about that.
There we go.
How you guys doing? My why is to lead, to inspire, and empower others to be the best version of themselves. I'm committed to excellence through character development, high expectations, accountability, and consistency. All of those are traits that I come by naturally. I got educators as parents, got a father who worked 43 years, never missed a day's work, never called in sick. Got a mom who's a PhD level educator who's extremely close to me. So excelling at everything I did in life is something that I was born with, and I lived every day, and I continue to do at this point in this new role as an athletic director. So
Awesome. I mean, round of applause. Thank you. So here's where this goes. And this is what I really want everybody kind of take with them as we wrap up purpose statement here. It becomes your elevator speech. And I think it's really important that when you're up in front of stakeholder groups, you can start by sharing the purpose statement. But when you begin to tell the story about, who influenced that, that's where people really get to understand why you lead the way you do. And I think they get to understand you as a person. And so often we are seen as human doings. And we talk about our coaches all the time, like we need to see value in the person instead of just giving value to the doing, right? When we're talking about athletes. But the same is true when we're dealing with parents. They so often just see the decision we make and they forget that, we're human beings and we're trying to do what's best for our programs and what's best for kids. And so that's going to help them understand that, we're kind of all in this together and we're not the big evil empire.
Hey, Russ.
Yeah,
I want to go back to something you said. You said I used to have a purpose statement that was, love more, serve more, and I forget how it ended. And now there's something different. So what's developed today isn't necessarily what it will be 5, 10, 15 years from now.
Well, yeah, exactly right. So, it doesn't matter kind of where you start or what you land on today. Here's the key piece. It's going to change as you grow as a person and as a leader. It should change. When your position changes, your focus may change along with it. And so the purpose statement may change. Lastly, I'll just say this. Often when you first write these purpose statements, they get long and aren't easy to memorize. But the power in this is it's succinct and it's something that you can remember and easily share. So if someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, and I had this happen. I went on a snowboarding trip and ended up in an outdoor hot tub with someone that said, "What do you do for a living?" And I said, "I'm an activities director." And they said, "No, what do you do?" And I thought, "Oh, okay." And so I shared my purpose statement. I connect students with meaningful adults. And then I talked about the core values. And that's really what I mean is like on a moment's notice, can you go into that purpose statement and in essence, share that elevator speech about the impact and the influence that we all have and that we're blessed to have in the position that we hold. And our position isn't easy. And I have people tell me all the time, you have a tough job. But I remind them that it's also really rewarding because this is the kind of work that I get to do. And so that's where I see the value in purpose statements. But any other questions here? I got 2 minutes before I have to turn it over to Mr. Percival. All right, everybody, I'm going to go into listening mode. I want to be a resource for you. So if you have anything that comes up down the road, I'll type my email here into the chat, but glad you could be here today. And thanks so much for letting me be a part of it. Matthew.
Thank you, Russ. And if you're got your screen on, just maybe a show of your hands and say thanks to Russ. One piece that I appreciate you sharing, Russ, is folks that are maybe transitioning to a new position and role. And that's where I find myself. And so I found today really valuable to go back in, even though I'm familiar with these steps and this process. It's helping me to refine and craft my purpose statement so it matches more closely the work I'm doing today. So thanks again, Russ. And now, Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you. You flew in here and you made it, and we're thankful for that.
Well, thanks, Charlie. Thanks to all of you for being with us. And first and foremost, I've had the opportunity to travel with Russ quite a bit. He's a dear friend and great colleague. And unfortunately, his story about being in a hot tub is not false. It's very true. And he's about the most boring guy to ever be in a hot tub with, I think, on a travel would be Russ Reed to talk all that stuff. But he's dead on when he talks about it because he doesn't truly just say that and teach that. It is how he lives his life. So honored to have the opportunity to follow him. And thanks, Troy. I'm just coming back from Today, as many of you are well aware, National Girls and Women in Sports Day, different ceremonies going on across the country, and in Minnesota, one going on at the History Center, and we were fortunate enough to have one of our coaches be recognized for one of their awards today, and so I appreciate the timing with all this for me to come in, and I apologize for missing part of Russ's there, but I know for all of you, time is valuable, and that's really what this next little segment is about. And when Charlie asked me to talk about this, it's certainly, there's a lot of different pieces to it. I think starting and grounding in purpose is the most important, and so I'm glad that's where things started today with this session as well. But the other part to it is the part that I've seen consume people in this profession has been the details. And whether you've done this job for one month, one day, or you've done it for 25 years, the details can consume people. And I think really what I just want to share are a couple of different models, a couple of different ways that maybe you will find helpful, but really with the idea of finding your own model for success when it comes to organization and detail and what it is that this job entails. Because as Russ just said, earlier when he said, what do you do? And the guy dug a little bit deeper and got into the purpose statement. We get that question a lot. And I think really the answer to what does an AD do, no one understands or knows what an AD does unless you have walked in their shoes, because there's so many parts and components that this perception is so different. And I think we do that with a lot of professions and a lot of different jobs, but I think it happens to us a lot. Like people say, oh, that sounds cool, I would like to be an AD someday, or that sounds fun, you must get to go to a lot of games. And then you rattle off some of the stats or statistics on the number of evenings you're away from home or the number of hours that you spend and what goes into all of those things to making them happen. And in some ways, like a game official and many are a referee in so many sports, no one really notices your job and what you're doing and what you're providing for the value to that event, except for when things get screwed up, right? It's like if all of a sudden a team shows up and you didn't have officials there, or you don't have workers there, or something goes awry with the crowd or something else, then all of a sudden you hear about that. And so trying to manage all that, I think is really important. And the last thing I'll say before we kind of jump in is that's what makes the job of a high school AD so unique. We are not just the AD for one particular varsity sport. And Mark Ryan is a good friend of mine. He is an associate athletic director at the University of Minnesota. He's been there for through 7 ADs. He's still hung around through 7 different ADs in his role, and been in many different capacities. His kids came through here at ECU High School. We made that connection. He lives in our community, and we had that opportunity. And he shares the story all the time about the difference. And just a couple of weeks ago, Phil Archer from Cretin-Derham and I, along with some collegiate ADs, had a chance to go work with the University of Minnesota interns and who are looking at athletic department careers. And Mark says it this way, at the collegiate level, at the University of Minnesota, they have more people with the title athletic director in their job title. Now that title might be assistant athletic director or associate director for a particular piece, than they actually have varsity programs. And we sit in most situations, and many of you on here, I'm sure, have a worse off situation than I do, where it's me and one assistant, administrative assistant to work with to try to coordinate. And as Mark will say to me all the time, and by the way, at the University of Minnesota, we don't have 9B athletics or junior high athletics, right? So they're just working with the varsity level, more or less, at that level. And the other piece that he'll always bring into mind and referencing that is he'll talk about the difference in that role and how different our role is from those at the collegiate level. And those of you who maybe spent time there, worked in collegiate athletic offices, you know what I'm talking about. And he was here for a football game, and it happened to be against Russ's now current school at Eden Prairie. We were playing a football game. We had a weather delay, and we're in the middle of a weather delay, and Mark's walking by and took a picture of me. And at the time, of course, soaking wet because you're out in the elements, I have a phone in one hand, a walkie-talkie in the other, and trying to talk to 2 coaches at the same time about what we're going to do. And he sent me a text later, about a week later or so, because the Gophers had the same thing happen to them. And he said, here's the picture of our AD during the rainout, and here's the picture of you during a weather delay. And their AD at the time was in a, what do you call it, a booth or a luxury booth or whatever you would say, doing a TV interview about some things going on, doing a time kill or a time filler for the Big Ten Network, right? So the jobs are so different. And I share that with you, not because of like Russ said, there's so much great value in what we get the opportunity to do, but there are also so many details that go into it. So how are you going to coordinate that? How are you going to organize your details to make this a successful thing for you? And so I'm just going to share a couple of different ways, and I'll let Russ jump back in for a minute, because one of the ones I want to share is their weekly thing. And Trevor's on here, I see too. Trevor can talk about it from an assistant AD's perspective, living this with Russ each day now. But when you have the chance to have change, whether that's a new role, you've got new people in your department, new coaches that you're working with, there's always a chance for that reflection. And we went through that here at Eastview, and Eastview is a school that's been open for 25 years. We've had one athletic department assistant since the day the doors opened here at Eastview High School. Joan Beckman, we don't have a Hall of Fame at Eastview. If and when we do, she's a first ballot Hall of Famer. She was everything to everybody in every athletic department, or within every team within our athletic department. And she retired this past summer. So there's this transition going on. And it's one of those things when that level of experience walks out the door, it's trying to put it down on paper. What is this going to look like? How do we actually do it? Because there's, today was a perfect example of that, where we're cranking up for all things postseason related. And in that, in the past, it would be a conversation where I would just say to Joan, hey, guess what today is? February 1st. And we know what that means, right? We just go to work and we know what we're doing. But Michelle, our new assistant, who has a son, has multiple kids who've been participants in athletics, so she knows it from the parent side, has been a clerical person in our district for several years, but at the elementary level, a lot of big learning curve. And so we've gone to this monthly kind of reminder, and I'm relying on things that I've learned from my other colleagues and seen from my other colleagues to kind of put together. So I'm going to share this first link for you, which is a monthly look ahead at the details. And it's really just that idea of when we get into how do we manage all of this? How do we live our lives related to this? How do we put this together? So I'm going to, first of all, share it in the chat, the link here. And then, Charlie, do I have screen share capabilities at all? Do you know?
You should be able to.
All right, I'm going to give it a whirl here, and I'll just see. If I don't, it's not the end of the world, because I'm going to share the link so everyone can look at it. But just so you know what I'm looking at here too. So what you'll see, and I just shared in the link, is kind of that monthly to-do list and a month by month look. And I apologize because some of the terminology has changed even since this was originally put together. Looking at this kind of in that month by month approach, and you can see at the bottom, July, August, all the way through, and scroll and pick on your different tabs. If there's one thing I've learned in this job, is that being an AD truly is a 12-month a year, 24/7 type of job, because there are always things to be done. But in doing so and staying ahead of the game on some of these details can make such a difference. And what I would encourage you to do is make a copy of this particular thing that I just shared with you. And those of you who live in the Google Doc world know what that is, in a Google Sheet world. Make a copy of it. Make it your own. Put in what's unique to you, because every school district's different. Everybody's got a little bit different things that they work with. So for us, in fact, like the very first one, update registration and fee pay for the fall. And last year we switched to My Payments Plus. So we've been fee pay for a long time. Now we're My Payments Plus. So, but whatever your online registration might be, all these things to do, because I think one of the hardest things, and had a mentor when I first started this role at Eastview 15 years ago, Scott Larson, who many of you may know that name. Scott was a longtime AD at Apple Valley High School, and also region secretary currently, and a conference secretary. But Scott was one of those first people to really say, the things that you can get done, those things you can get done ahead of time to save you down the road, are going to make such a huge difference. And never has that been more true. And I'll give you a simple example. I use my Outlook calendar a lot for everything. And as simple as that sounds, there are things by even shifting dates, recurring year by year things on that calendar that make all the difference. So for 14 years, I think, of my 15, I was late at getting our Excel award submitted to Lisa Lismore at the Minnesota State High School League to get our candidates in. Every year I was late. And I always wondered why. Well, all I had to do was change when my reminder on my calendar that would then come up of when I actually had to get started on that process. Because the reality of that process was it took about a month from start to finish to collect nominees from our staff, to have kids submit things, to make that selection, to get the paperwork submitted. So by simply looking at those dates and when those timelines come up for you and when you hit those, it can make all the difference in the world. Again, obviously we all know that once August hits, or August 15th or whatever the date is each year, things are going to really change. And for all of us, no different than a classroom teacher, when we're here in the building, we don't want to spend our time behind a computer. That's the time we want to spend communicating with kids, communicating with our coaches, communicating with other ADs and colleagues, all those kinds of things that we want to be able to do during that time we have. So what are those things in those after hours times that we can really put together kind of on a month-to-month basis with what we're doing? So as you see there, you're going to see all sorts of different types of things that might be unique to us, things that might be unique to our school district, but kind of just those whole things of who you're working with and what those activities might be. If nothing else, it's something that if those of you that already have something like this, maybe it's just something to check on and say, do I have all these items? And, and I think there's nothing in this business that is secretive. It's all things that we've learned from each other. This wasn't an original document. This is a modified document that I got from somebody along the way that has served us really well at Eastview. And doing that, kind of giving that step to it. So I'm going to pause there before I talk about kind of the meeting things to really hit on some of these details without bogging you down with all the different details of what we do. Like Russ, I'm happy to answer anybody's questions about them or different things, but I want to shift gears into the meeting aspect of this here in just a moment, kind of some of those set meetings that we do that really help catch a lot of these details with coaches and whatnot. But before I do that, I'm going to hit pause, and Russ, Charlie, anybody else, or any questions from the group before we shift gears into the meeting side of planning. Anything else? Everybody good? Charlie, anything from you there?
No, Matt, this is a great resource. And then I know Russ encouraged many of you to grab that out of the chat. Matt, with your permission, we'll make a copy of this on the league Gmail account, and then we'll post it in resources
Awesome.
On the dashboard as well, so that not only this group can access, but other new ADs who may be looking for some things to assist them. Thank you for sharing with us.
Absolutely. And I'm going to go, and the next one is one that Russ has used. And Trevor, if you're still on here, you can weigh in too on what these look like in terms of, and maybe start here, Russ, for just a minute. I'm going to put it in the chat, but if you want to give a quick overview of how you do it within your office, and then I'm going to talk about it from our office and our coaches as well. I'm going to put this in the chat right now. Russ, go ahead.
Sure. So I took that document that Matt is sharing with you, the month to month, and I really just tried to organize it into weekly agendas. And what I've learned by using Google is everything is sort of active in the document. And so it helps keep us organized each week. So I'll just take you through, next week. So this is next week's agenda. We sit down on Monday morning. My two assistants that work in the office with me, along with Trevor, and then anybody else that we think we need to invite into the meeting. We'll go through the agenda together. And at the beginning of the agenda, it's just got some things that I know we need to look at this week, like the current positions we have posted. We'll walk through that and where we are in the process of getting our coaches onboarded. We're in the midst of doing our Athena award. And so, when I say active, like I'll have the Athena ballot right there. So people can go through and look at what the Athena ballot looks like. You go right into the nomination form. So this would be a link that we send out to coaches. So you have the nomination form, but then next year, when we get to this week, all that stuff just needs to be copied and you're all set. We are prepping for spring sports. So that goes into the meeting. We go through the things that we need to get accomplished here before we get our spring sports going. I have postseason Lake Conference hockey meetings coming up, so I'm working on prepping for that next week. And then we get into the week specifically. Our event schedule is linked here, so all the games home and away that we have coming up for everybody, to grab at a moment's notice. If someone asks, when does a team play? Facility schedules in case we need to look up what's happening in our building each night of the week. And then if a coach comes in and asks about what time their bus leaves, I just have that bus schedule linked as well. And then we go each day, like who's going to be at what event and what are the events, what are the times, where do we need to be, any important announcements. But I think the key piece is for us, I want to be able to look up who our official assigners are in case we have an official that doesn't show up on time. So I have every sport, every website, every username and password on there so that any one of us can go in anytime and figure out where our officials are. And then obviously the voucher that we send out to our officials, who's supervising, like if we have administrative help at events, we have all them sign up on that document. Our coach's contact list is really important to have so we can at a moment's notice get a hold of an assistant coach or a head coach. So that's linked in there. We track our fundraisers, who's working weekends for us, our COVID updates. And then as you saw there, the link that I think Matt was sharing is I can go back and look at any week. And so when Matt was saying Excel, if I go into like the beginning of December, I've probably got Excel on here along with AAA as start working on that, so next year when I look at the beginning of December, I'm going to have that in there. In fact, it's probably on the November one where you start looking at doing the Excel awards so that you meet those deadlines. But that's sort of, I just turned Matt's sheet into weekly agendas, if that helps everyone.
Thanks, Russ. And I think, again, one of the things is that communication. And that's what I want to just kind of end with in terms of some of those pieces of how we set up times to communicate. And so for Russ, and his staff to be able to do that and sit down each week. For Michelle and I, it's just the two of us. And so for us, it's each Monday. But then it's also for me with these different teams that we work with. So every Tuesday morning, I have a meeting with our facilities team and grounds team. They're integral to this. So it's, our building supervisor staff and what that might look like along with our grounds team. And that's been an invaluable meeting to really look at and see what do we need to do on that side of it, because they really make things helpful. On Mondays, it's with Michelle and I to look at the week on, and to go through that. And I think those types of things that are just routine allow us to catch so many different things. Russ talked about officials. That's what Michelle and I do. If you can kind of see this blue thing behind me, I'll just turn my calendar there. That's a 2-month look ahead that I still do the old fashioned way. They're on kind of a whiteboard calendar. And the reason for that is in doing them in that way, I catch so many things. So we live in this electronic world, but I've caught so many things when I'm just handwriting them on our board and we have those varsity events and other things and who's covering them on there. Just it's like, oh, whoops, we can't have wrestling and basketball at home on the same night, but if I can catch that 2 months ahead of time, I can save myself some of those headaches of catching them on the night of. So as much as we talk about this computer way to do it, we're sharing you with the Google Docs, which I certainly encourage for all of us to kind of keep track of things. There is some benefit too. And people look at me all the time like, my gosh, that's a lot of work and a lot of handwriting, whatever. I'm like, you know what? It's almost therapeutic for me in a way to come in, spend that time to really look at what we've got going. It gives me a good picture. And I do some things color coded and we're entering that period of time of, for me on my calendar, everything's red, which is a postseason event. And, you talk about that in the world of sports, they talk about March Madness. And I think in high school athletics, without a doubt, February and March are the two most incredible periods of time, because we will have our first section events next Tuesday with Alpine and Nordic ski. And those will go right on through the end of March when boys basketball wraps up. So basically 8 straight weeks of postseason events and all the things that go into that. So as part of our weekly meeting today, it was starting to look at those postseason things and what does that entail in terms of workers, events, et cetera. Like Russ, we also create, and I'll just share this with you really quick, but kind of this administrative coverage at all of our different events. And this is what we do in our weekly team leadership building, across the building. And this is where I think it makes a huge difference. I think sometimes the AD job can be really lonely. We can work in isolation. We're in different parts of a building sometimes. Sometimes we're not a part of that building leadership team. And I'm really blessed and fortunate in my building to be a part of our building leadership team on a lot of different things. And yes, that means I have some additional curriculum duties. And yes, that means I have lunch duty and all those other things. But it also means that I have the opportunity to really connect with colleagues for them to understand what's going on and what's going on in our programs and how they can help support those. And so what you see on the screen in front of you is just kind of our events pulled from our school. Where do we need help? Where are those things? And you can see I've blocked out or hidden anything that we've gotten to. We're getting down there for the winter season. But you can also see that we're going to approach at the end of the winter 201 events that need an administrator. Those are our home events. Those are or away events against a school or playoff game that requires an admin to be in attendance. And so we're talking about 200 events of attendance. You can't do that by yourself. And that's just our winter sport. We can't do all of those. And we add in then with our person who oversees the arts, kind of that same piece. And it really gives that good picture of what everybody is up to and with things that are going on with their within the building, what's happening, oh, by the way, we've got this home basketball game scheduled, but we also have registration night. Do we want to look at that? Where can we do that? And it also helps those folks up in the building really get connected and with our students too, and in that role. So if you look at just that part, Russ is talking about his Monday meeting. So I've got a standing Monday meeting with Michelle, my assistant. We're going over things Tuesday with those grounds people and with our building custodial staff, on Thursdays with our building leadership team, and it does become a lot of those standing meetings, but I'll tell you, it's been a great connector. It's been a great chance to really sit down and have those connections with those people and develop some things beyond just the nuts and bolts and the management side of it, but a chance to get to know each other better and a chance to have that conversation, hey, what have you been up to? What's going on with you this week, whatever that might be. And of course, that's been challenged by schedules, by COVID, by all these different things. And yet finding that time and really trying to make that work has been really helpful. Then obviously, like many of you, we've got our conference colleagues. For us as a 4 high school district, we've got our conference colleagues, those types of groups that we're checking in with and connecting with. But those types of things have really helped guide that work. Having something to work from has really helped us. Last thing I want to share is the connection with coaches. I'll make sure and share this as a link once I turn this over. I still have it in Word form because the one I have is actually it'd be the easiest to see. So I'll upload it and share it with you that way. The one our coaches actually use is more like in Google form now, and so that we can track all of their information and whatnot. But it's where we start and it's how we finish each of our seasons with our coaches. And I think it's allowed us to catch, again, a lot of these managerial details, but it's also allowed us that opportunity to dive deeper into what Russ was talking about around purpose and where we want to go. And also some of that just built in terms of how we want to grow and how we want to be reflective. So again, I will share my screen for a second so you can take a look at it. Like I said, I will throw this in the chat here as soon as we're done, but this is where we start. And, instead of starting the season and then having something at the end, we actually start with the reflection in mind. So kind of starting with the end in mind of what we want to do for a season. And our timeline is 1 month, 4 to 6 weeks prior to the start of a season. We want to hold the preseason meeting with a coach. So we have a preseason meeting and a postseason meeting with each head coach. If they want to and they're available to bring assistants with them, that's great. And then we have one full department meeting in the summer where it's all head coaches, all assistant coaches that we do every summer. And like many programs where it's been very difficult to catch everybody at once, we end up offering that 2 and sometimes 3 times to be able to get to everybody in the summer. But what we're able to do within their schedules, whether it's early morning, later in the evening, during the school day, whatever works best, is to have that pre and postseason meeting. And this is what we do to kind of keep the end in mind. So we do start with purpose. Much of what Russ was talking about their individual and what they have for a program, and then how their program is going to define success. So we start with that idea in mind. And then once we define what that definition of success is going to be, we can really start looking at some results and some data. And so the data that we look at in terms of those summaries, you can see some of those likes and dislikes, and you can see some of that is really not win-loss type data, but how many kids do we have in the program? Are we growing the program? How many touch points do we have with our youth association, over the last 12-month period? How many different things do we do in community service? So each of our programs has kind of that community service component to it. What are we doing in those areas? And then that feedback part to it that becomes so important, sitting down and helping create feedback that's meaningful. So rather than just being a generic document that we could send out, or that we could do and have, what is it that we can do as an individual program to really develop this? Same with parent feedback. And then some of the most important stuff has come from assistant coaches, our trainers, and what our athletic trainer is able to provide. And from that, to be able to set what are those identified growth areas, what are those action steps going to be for the next year, and staff, facility, equipment, scheduling type needs that we can get squared away. So starting with the end in mind has really helped us. It's moved up our scheduling greatly. We were usually one of those schools that was last to the conversation when it came to non-conference scheduling. And now I would say we've moved that up greatly to try to be on top of that. But the same is true when it comes to those things that we want to put into the season, what we're really looking to accomplish. So those meetings have also been really helpful. So the ones in terms of the monthly organizational details that are really more for me or for those in our office, what Russ talked about, those meetings within the athletic department, all those other ones I talked about, and also with our coaches have really served that really well. So Joel's question, yes, as soon as I'm done here in just a minute, I will put it in a Google form that you can take away as a link, not just that Word document. That's an easily shareable one that you're happy to take, tweak, make your own, do whatever you want with it. So with that, Charlie, I'm going to turn it back to you. And if there's any questions from the group or anybody that we can help with, and I'm not sure because I'm not looking at participants, and Trevor, if you're still on and you want to comment about your meetings with Russ and those weekly department meetings, any feedback would certainly be great to hear from you as well.
Thank you, Matt. Folks, we're going to run to just a quick 5-minute break here, but I think, again, if your video is on, just reach up and offer your appreciation to Matt for sharing his experience and some of those resources with us. Here, just a chance to stretch your legs, get up, maybe answer a quick email or make a quick phone call, use the restroom, but stand up, move around a bit. Let's get back here. It's 2:43. Let's come back at 2:48, and we'll get started with our breakout sessions and start the second half of the workshop today.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Take care. I'll throw that in the chat, Charlie, so you can put it in resources.
Great. Appreciate it, Matt.
Right.
Thanks much.
Thanks. Yep. Bye-bye.
All right, going to put out the all call here for folks to step back in if you can hear me. And we've had just over 30 participants most of the time, and it looks like we're still hovering around that number. So our breakout rooms will be a little smaller maybe than previously anticipated. You know, just one comment, I think for a lot of our ADs that are on this call, especially if you're a first year AD, you know, I think about, you know, hearing what or looking at the tools that Matt and Russ are using just from an organizational standpoint and in terms of connecting with coaches and organizing their days and weeks, that may not be something that you're going to develop effectively in year one, right? Just kind of getting through each day is the top priority, but knowing that there are tools like this that do not need to be invented from scratch, knowing there are folks that are using resources like this, you know, hopefully planting those seeds that it gives you an avenue maybe when things just slow down between seasons or over the course of the summer as you think about, you know, growing your own effectiveness in leading and managing your department. At this time, we're going to break out into smaller groups, and Megan Potter from Wayzata is going to be assigned to one group to start. Tony Fisher from Minneapolis Public Schools, another group, and Matt Mahoney from Fairmont, and each kind of with their own topic idea. We thank you three for stepping into this and helping our new ADs. And we look forward to learning from and with you in the process. Bob, before we go, anything to add at this point?
Yeah, no, I think really well done. And thanks to Russ and Matt. Russ, how long have you been an AD at Eden Prairie?
1 year this week.
How about total?
So 7 years at Prairie Lake, 2 at Lakeville North. So this is my 10th year.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, right? When you hear an experienced AD, right, that you don't have to be where Russ or Megan or Matt are in year 1 and 3. But again, these are resources, because it's really easy when you hear people like that are doing amazing things to feel like you aren't doing what you're supposed to right now. And I bet you if we asked how many of you are an AD even 8 hours a day, all of you would say yes. In fact, it's probably 12-hour days, but I'm only allowed to be one or paid to be one, less than half of that. So again, the time that you're allowed to be an AD, according to your contract, doesn't always allow you to do your job the way that you would like to. So just keep that in mind as you work through this. They're here to share with you to allow you to get to where it's taken them years to be able to get to. So Charlie, that's the only thing that I would share, and great information from all of you.
That sounds good. Amy, I'm going to turn it over to you to get us to our breakout rooms.
Okay, cross your fingers that this is going to work. Here we go.
It's going to work fine.
If you can't pull your CSV, let me know.
Okay, so they're going.
Yep.
First of all, just a special thanks to Megan and Matt and Tony for sharing with us some things that have been really helpful and led to them being more successful in their roles. Again, I just think we stand to learn so much from each other, and iron really sharpens iron, and that certainly is the case here. With that, I'm going to call up just really quickly here, kind of where we're at in the agenda for today. And are you seeing a PowerPoint presentation right now? I see a couple of head nods, and that's good. And so we want to just come out of those breakout sessions, take our remaining few moments, knowing that there's a million things that could get in the way of you attending this new AD workshop, right? There's something that needs to be done, and it's probably pressing. And you have chosen, one, to show up today. You've chosen to stay engaged, start to finish. And I just want you to feel really good about that, because the job will always pull and tug at you. And so I just want to express my appreciation. As is always the case, in your registration responses, our school continues to be something that many of you want to learn more from and use it maybe more effectively. And the league has a different kind of relationship with our schools. We're aware of it. We have a partnership as it results to putting rosters, on our public website, but we don't use it like you use it day in and day out. And so we're not necessarily the best resource. But that being said, I want to kick it over to Laura because I think there's some ideas on how we might be able to provide some resource and training, or at least facilitate that between our schools and our new ADs. So Laura, could you come on and just visit with us a little bit?
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me, Charlie. As Charlie said, our schools is really not a state high school league endorsed or sponsored product, but we do know that 98+% of our schools across Minnesota use our schools, and it becomes part of your life every day. That is why we're leveraging that for both schedules and rosters through the new website, in an attempt to not have people cross-enter or double-enter things. I continue to see the same question that came up on the Q&A of, we need training on our schools. And while that is not something that I can provide or someone in our office can provide, I do think that we can provide the service of coordinating that training, and it serves all of us much better. So I'm going to take the lead on trying to set up some sessions with our schools, but I need your help in developing what those agendas might look like. And my hope would be that we do kind of a number of sessions, and they're shorter rather than longer. Making a 2.5-hour investment of time for you guys is really hard. And being able to pick and choose the topics that you need, I think, does a lot more than investing a lot of time when it might not be what you need. So I would invite you at this point to go into chat and drop in those topics that you would like to see some training, some support on those. And then I'll take that list and then probably work with some other ADs also, and we'll start to develop some type of training opportunities for ADs to get some targeted help with our schools.
Yeah, so if you could just drop those questions or specific areas of training into chat, that will be really helpful. And, our schools is interesting because some schools use it in a real robust fashion. It's part of registration, it's part of scheduling, it's part of facilities management, you're ordering transportation, maybe you're using it to create vouchers for event workers. And some of you simply are using it for scheduling because you have to. And it really doesn't matter where you are and what your relationship with our school is. Again, just thinking about those particular topic areas that would be helpful. Drop those into chat, and that can help us assist our schools in putting together some, as Laura said, some real targeted trainings. appreciate Brett's comment in chat too. Our school reps don't always teach the best. You know, these are people who often have developed the software and they're not necessarily the ones using it on a daily basis, or not using it like you are in your school. So that's a really great comment, and certainly I think we could assist with that as well.
I love that one, Brett, because it's such an interesting balance. Sometimes we're self-taught and we do something that's really good, but it takes us 6 clicks to get there. And someone else might come along and say, so why are you doing it that way? Here's a much easier way. So even some of that group think on some things might be really helpful.
As you continue to think about our schools and drop those into chat, you know, you can kind of see the rest of the Q&A screen here, that information or the collective set of questions as I kind of went through all of the registration responses, really kind of 3 other areas. Effectively dealing with poor behavior and I think adult behavior. We're used to working with kids. Many of us have been teachers and coaches, and you know, dealing with student behavior is one thing we've probably feel pretty comfortable with. But what about adults and parents managing the job versus the job managing me? That work-life balance, and then leading from the middle, knowing that you have to work with administrators, principals, district level administrators, superintendents, et cetera, that are above you, but also leading coaches, leading your community, maybe leading school staff and students that kind of are below you on that hierarchical chain. And so I really found a lot of questions in and around there, but I think at this time, maybe leveraging the last 10 minutes before we start wrap up, just ask if you have a question you want to ask, that maybe we can learn from each other, but you could unmute or put in the chat what those questions might be, if there's a burning question that you have. And it takes a little bit of courage to ask that question. So don't hesitate to do that, step into that. And again, we've got several people, 18 people left on this call that can assist in trying to answer questions or help with scenarios that you may be working through right now. And if it's 3:45, and our minds are elsewhere, that's understandable too, but we're here to assist.
So Charlie, I'll speak if you don't mind.
Please.
So the piece on how do I manage this job versus the job managing me, I think that there's 2 things that I would, you know, or pieces of advice I would give. Number 1, the good to great piece. So I used to be an art director prior to being an athletic director. And I had a special skill set where I was able to, you know, create different graphics and things of that nature. And, you know, the competitiveness in all of us as former athletes, I kept that to myself and was like, oh, I want to make sure that I'm better than that guy up the road. So I'm not going to share that information. And once information was shared with me, I then felt comfortable with sharing information. And as I started to share more information was shared with me, which ultimately I feel took me from a good athletic administrator to a great athletic administrator. So the reason that I'm sharing that information with you is because feel free and don't hesitate to reach out to other ADs. And it doesn't make sense to reinvent the wheel when ultimately a lot of the things that we've done have been given to us and we've just kind of customized it for our own specific needs. And then the last piece of information that I would give you is just, I have what's called a 3-year business model. And so I essentially go into every situation as though the first year I'm dumping resources into that for, you know, to whatever it is that I'm invested in. And so I plan to lose money. I mean, that's just a mindset that I have. And I'll give you an example of how this business model can be applied. But then year 2, my goal is always to either break even or come pretty close to breaking even and or have a small profit. But either way, the goal is to break even year 2. And then by year 3, I look to expect a small profit. So an example could be within my softball program. I'm a new athletic director. My softball program is struggling, right? So the very first year, as it relates to scheduling, I made schedule a really easy schedule where we may not win a game, but still we're competitive, right? So we're losing money in that regard. But then year two, I feel as though with having enough training and having the right coach in place and so forth, my goal is to break even. And so at that point, maybe from a win-loss standpoint, we can then get to a point of having a couple of wins within the season or having our participation numbers increase, whatever that break-even point is for you or what you've established. And then by year three, you expect the profit of essentially either A, winning more games, or B, having more participants participate within the softball team, or having a more competitive schedule. And then at that point, I take that 3-year business model and I turn it around and start to apply it within that same sport. Again, I just find a different purpose to then start over again and progress within that particular goal or that particular sport. So that would be the advice: the good to great, and then the 3-year business model.
Appreciate that, Tony. And as somebody who, like many of the new ADs, is new in my role, that resonates with me, right? So I sure appreciate hearing that. And I think our ADs that are still with us too as well. Other questions or comments from our participants?
Charlie, I think this is Bob. We've often talked about in your progression as an AD, at what point can you start leading and stop managing? Right? So surrounding yourself with whether it's site managers or qualified assistants, but at what point do you say, manage when it's a must, but lead when you can, right? You need buses, you need officials, you need workers, you need games, you need all of those things or you won't make it. But if you're only doing that, this job will not be as rewarding as it can be if you're leading, right? You're educators, you're here to help assist people get better. Oftentimes that'll fuel your fires. So wherever you can get to that point where you can lead versus just managing, and I don't know how much Russ or Matt, but that's something that they're pretty skilled in, and you are as well, Charlie. And then the other thing I would say too for yourselves in finding balance, personal balance, whether it's Wednesday nights when sometimes your schools don't play, or a precinct caucus night when you're at least not supposed to play, or even if it's just Sundays, right? Block that time out on your calendar, turn your phone off, spend it with your family, go do something for yourself, or someone will schedule that time for you. Right. And pretty soon your family will not expect to see you, or you don't go to your children's games, or you don't ever get to go spend time with friends. And that too can be a very lonely, isolated place as an AD. And that too will not lead you to sustainability. So in a long story short, schedule time for yourself.
I'd like to just share a quick story on that, Bob. And I think you all can relate to this. Right, the phone calls, the text messages, the emails, they come all the time at any hour, because sometimes this coach has an issue and they've been in the classroom all day, then they went to practice or a game, and they finally settle in after dinner and they put their kids to bed, and ding, at 10:15 you get a text message, and what do? You read it, and sometimes you respond to it, and now your brain's whipped up and you're going 100 miles an hour. Well, we were planning an August family vacation, and when you get after August 1 and you're an AD, you know how hard that time of year is, right? Things are heating up. And my wife said, she was just concerned, I want you to be present with us. And I'm just worried that your phone is going to be a problem because of all the text messages, emails, things that are going to happen. And I thought about this, and I wanted it to be a good vacation. We hadn't had that vacation. And I said, I have a solution. I'm just going to leave my phone at home. And my wife wept. She wept, not because I was that she was happy I was making that decision, because she felt that was the only way. Like she said, Charlie, if you think that's the only way you're going to be able to manage your job and create time for us as a family is by leaving your phone somewhere else, then your priorities are so out of balance and out of whack that that's a huge problem for us. So I met her halfway. I didn't leave my phone at home, but I turned off my my email notifications. And I sent a message to our coaching staff, our entire athletic department. And I just said, you know, if you need me, you can call or text message, but I'm going to encourage you to use your discretion on whether that's necessary because I'm going on vacation and I need to enjoy my family. And simply turning off my email notification, which used to flash up on my phone, simply turning that off freed up my mind and my attention so that I could focus more on my family. So that was one small thing I did. And I have never turned my email notifications on my phone again. I still get text messages, calls will still ring through, but I never get the notification that I have a new email on my phone. And it's obvious, honestly, it's helped my professional and personal life balance. And it was one simple thing. And I'm not perfect, but it was helpful for me. Okay, well, we're at 3:55. We've had a great day. 2.5 hours is a long time. I appreciate your commitment. I'm going to stay on this call for a little bit. If you've got a question or a comment and you want to share that with me, feel free. But I just want to say thank you. I want to extend the support of the league staff. We are here to assist you. There's no question that you can't ask us, right? We remember Craig Perry telling me this, is Charlie, we worry most from the ADs we never hear from. And I'm understanding just how true that is. We want to help you. We want you to be successful. We want you to have the greatest impact you can back in your school and community. So with that, we wish you well. Please know that we're going to have another one of these sessions. There'll be some communication. But I'll tell you right now, April 19th, from 9 to 11, we're going to change the time format a little bit, and we'll send some information out here as we get a little bit closer to that date. But looking to engage you again about a month or so after that MNI AAA conference. All right. Have a good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. Appreciate you being on the call with us.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, everyone.
You bet. Appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody.
I'll stick around, Charlie. I've got a 4 o'clock. So what are 4 minutes going to do for me?
Good. How did your breakouts go, Tony?
I thought they went well. I mean, I thought, you know, I asked the question, how many folks had heard of the Glide app, and no one had heard of it. So we're on the cutting edge of, you know, providing our athletic directors with this app that I think ultimately we will all be using at some point in time.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And they can
should I look into that, Charlie? Are you familiar with it?
Just with what Tony shared with me, and I think the more we learn about it, I think there could be some value. I mean, be interesting to full bore